was a teenager in the 60s, and I was totally fascinated by going to the moon and going into space, and I wanted to do that. And you can see that a small lunar excursion module. So I got my PhD in Holland and came here as a postdoc working for NASA. I was really happy. And over my life, I've worked on several space missions with and for NASA, and I'm still doing that here at GSU. I very much enjoy that. But as the introductor said, that's the constant in my life. When I came here, I was in for a big culture shock, coming from the Netherlands. This was in the time that Ronald Reagan was president, and most people seem to think he was a savior or something. He was rescuing this country, and I didn't quite get it. But it took me a while to find people who had similar outlook on the world as I did. I did meet this one beautiful young woman who did have a very similar outlook on the world. And we were friends long before we did the other thing. And we married and started a family and had these two beautiful children, biological children, and moved to Montana. We thought it was a great place to raise a family. And then my wife didn't like being pregnant. I didn't mind making my contribution, but we lost the baby. So we decided, okay, what we're going to do, we'll adopt. Well, adoption is a very cruel process. We didn't realize that. You have to make choices. When you get a baby, you don't have to make choices. When you get a natural-born baby in your family. So the first thing, okay, you want a healthy white baby, you have to wait for 6 or 7 years. Well, sorry, I don't have that amount of time. We have to hurry up here. So do you want a handicapped child? You can come pick her up. Do you want an older child? Come and pick him up. Do you want a child of color? Come and pick him up. So we discussed, and I said, well, I still feel guilty about it, but I said, I don't want a handicapped child because I really want to take my children skiing and camping and hiking. This is what I do, and playing soccer. So child of color, no, of course not. That's not a problem. So we adopted 2 young African-American children from the United States, and here they are. And that was a very different process as well, because adoption in the past was something where you was shrouded in secrecy. Often the children were not told they were adopted. And there was an amount of shame in giving your child up for adoption. Well, that is really a very courageous thing to do. Now, in our case, keeping the secret wasn't really an option. Adoption now is very different. So we had to put together a portfolio of who we are, not our names, not where we live, but what we do, our outlook on life, our style of life. And the mothers of the children that are given for adoption pick you out. So the mother of Gabriel, my oldest son here, she picked us out, and she was a very young, brave woman who, a star athlete and a star student in high school, and she got pregnant, you know. People make mistakes. And she wanted to give the baby up for adoption. She picked us out, and we took the baby, and we were very happy with it. Now, and the same happened with Elizabeth, my the second baby there. And then we adopted one more child, and we said, okay, we go for an older child. Julia, who we picked up in an orphanage in Russia at age 6. And when you adopt an older child, it's very, very different. I could talk a lot about that forever, but what's so different is you get a child that often has had trauma. The bonding experience is totally different because they've had failures in bonding beforehand. And if you get a baby, it doesn't matter what color, you know, you're just genetically programmed to take care of them, and it's no problem. For men too, by the way. That goes very easy. With an older child, it's been an incredible challenge on both sides, but I think we've overcome, and I think she will turn out to be a healthy and happy and independent adult. But it was a a real challenge for me. Now, raising children in Montana is kind of idyllic, especially small children. It's a beautiful place. There's a lot you can do. As I said, I go skiing with my kids. I go camping with my kids. And in between seasons, I've been soccer coach for all of them. And, but then what happens is my son gets older, my black son gets older. And things happen in the world. And he is a very tall guy. He's 14 now. He's taller than I am. And he's going to grow up to be a very tall, strong, and also handsome young black man. And that means danger, in fact. You know who this is, right? Do you know who this is? 12-year-old playing with a toy gun and shot. And you can see the video online, and it took the police like 2 seconds to come in there and shoot without even looking. Well, here's my son. Could be him too. So how does that change you? Well, as a white progressive person, I've always understood this, there's something really wrong here, right? It doesn't take a great intellect to figure that one out. And I also feel it in my heart because I'm a human being and I can feel empathy. And I'm sure all of you do, except from pathological radio talk show hosts. Most people feel that way, right? The thing I hadn't realized was that I feel it here. And this is what parents of young black men feel, because there's a really good chance they will end up getting hurt or end up in jail for no good reason. And I could have understood that if somebody had explained it to me, but it's still very different when you feel it yourself. And so now we're part of that. And this reminded me when we adopted Gabrielle, the social worker who was sort of managing the adoption tells us, you have to realize you become a family of color now. I had no idea what she was talking about at that point. I was totally naive. And then I realized, oh, this is probably what she meant years later. But anyway, I don't want my children to live that way. And I don't want to live that way. So should I be afraid? Yes. Have you seen the Department of Justice report that just came out of Ferguson? It's like somebody cut open a boil and all the pus came out. I didn't know it was that bad, frankly. Maybe I'm naive. Or did you know that in the last month, the month of March, 100 people were shot by the police in this country, most of them not armed, over 100. And guess what the racial makeup is of that group and the gender makeup. So my son tells me, Gabriel, oh, you don't have to be afraid. But I know him. He's 14 years old. He loves to argue. He drives me crazy. He has no respect for authority. And he's 14 years old, so his impulse control is not perfect, right? So if he gets into a situation like that, he'll talk back and he can get himself in trouble. And what really surprised me was when Trayvon Martin was shot, you had President Obama saying, this could have been my son. And the media were all over him for it. Why? Are you that tone deaf? Are you so stupid that you can't understand that? And when the thing in New York City happened, Major Bill de Blasio, who is also a part of a mixed race family, said something like that he has to have the talk with his son, as all parents of young black men do. And the police was furious at them. They were all turning their backs on him. You've probably seen it on the news, right? Now, how can you be that tone deaf? If people do that, that tells me something about the NYPD, not about the mayor of New York. But it happened, and they just don't get it. And then we ended up experiencing something like that ourselves, which we had never expected. My son Gabriel is in a boarding school right now for very talented kids. Got a scholarship. He's very lucky. In Colorado, my wife lives in Montana, and Gabriel had a concussion, a pretty serious one. So she drove down, picked him up, drove him back up through Wyoming. And as she always does, she was speeding. And she got stopped by a white policeman. This is Wyoming, right? So the policeman looks in the window, and the fishing said to Gabe, who was laying half unconscious on the back seat under a blanket, "Show me your hands." And my wife is smart. She said, Gabe, show me your hands. Stay calm. But you don't mess with my wife. I learned that a long time ago. And she let the policeman have it after that. And he totally backed off. He apologized, and he didn't even give her a ticket. Ha, ha, ha. But so, great story, except now take one step back and think about it. What's going on here? This is white privilege. What this policeman saw was an upper middle class white woman, very assertive, and probably with good connections, who knew what she was doing, and he backed off. And my guess is he was just scared. And I understand policemen actually have a good reason to be scared, because they get shot sometimes too, but that's a different story. But what we see here is clearly white privilege. If Gabe's mom had been a black woman, I don't think it would have ended that way. And so while it's great for us, it's not great in the general, in the general picture. So, of course, this makes me have my doubts. I've had them for a long time. Can I be a good parent to children of color? One thing, if you think about, I want to be a role model. I can be a role model as a father, I hope, or as a citizen, I hope. I can't be a role model as a black man to my son because I'm not. I can't feel deep inside what it's like. I can understand it. I can think. And then think a little bit further about what Hillary Clinton said, it takes a village, right? I can't do everything. Here's my family, by the way. This is a more recent picture, so they're growing. And then both my sons are way taller than I am already. So the other thing I realized, I'm a scientist, so I start doing research. I read about families of mixed race, and I find they all go to similar doubts and processes, have similar experiences, not surprising probably. And one of the things that happened is that when children of color in a white family, which President Obama was too, by the way, when they come out, they don't have the protection of the family anymore. They lose their white privilege. And a lot of young men in their early 20s from those families tend to get very, very angry and scared at the same time. And sometimes they take it out on their parents. And that's understandable, and they'll mature out of that. And, but there are possible problems. But you know what? As I said, it takes a village. And there are other role models. I want my children to, live fearless and really expand themselves in any way they can. Here's my daughter. She's a great gymnast. And here's my son, Gabe. This is what happens when you raise an athletic young man or woman in the Mountain West. He makes 360-degree turns on his skis. And he's 14 years old. He wants to become a professional skier, which is totally age-appropriate. Right? He may change his mind or not. He certainly has the talent. But anyway, I want my children to have role models. Well, we have a great role model. This is a great role model for my daughter, too, by the way. So this is part of the village. It took me a long time to find this picture, because this is such a beautiful, positive picture, right? You don't find many positive pictures of most of our politicians, but in particular not of President Obama. I got this from an Indian newspaper. The other thing I learned was, well, regardless of adoption, you can't be everything to all your children anyway. It turns out my white biological son is gay. Well, can't be a role model for him either. That's not going to work. And we have plenty of friends who can do that for him. So let me start. go towards the end, multiracial families in the US are the fastest rising segment of the population. 50% increase between the 2000 and 2010 census. In the South, even more, 70% increase in 8 states in the South, including Georgia. So that's people who self-identify as us. The most common combination is black and white. So this is changing, and we vote, by the way. So I want to change this with a positive outlook. It's my son again on top of the mountain. 200 years from now, try to think of that. We'll all be dead and gone, right? That's the negative part of it. Now, the positive part of it is, we look at a history book in those days, in the future. What will we see? Well, we'll have George Washington still in there, and the great emancipator who forgave us our original sin, Abraham Lincoln. And Barack Obama will be in there because he was the first minority president. The Tea Party, if they're lucky, they'll have a comic relief footnote. You know, there was a Tea Party in the 19th century. You know what their name was? No, see? It's the Know Nothing Party. Much more appropriate name. All these talk show hosts or TV personalities that are constantly spewing hate, they'll be totally forgotten. But Barack Obama will be there. But even if you go a little bit back in the future, well, I'm getting old, so will not witness all the changes that I'm going to talk to you about. But a lot of you here are very young, and I actually think that you will see the changes that I will mention. That is, we've had our first black president. We'll have a Hispanic president in the future, and we'll have an Asian president, and we'll have a Native American president. And God forbid, it's high time, we'll have a female president at some point. And guess what? Governor Pence, listen, we'll have a gay couple living in the White House at some point. This is going to happen. And I'm really sorry that I won't be around long enough to experience all that. I'd really love to. But I'd like to change this everywhere. I forgot one thing to end this. I have to say to my fellow white people, is get used to it. Right? You can't turn the clock back. You don't want to turn the clock back. And this country is going to be better for it. Thank you.